Consultant senior în cadrul Diviziei Internaționale a Profiles International, este consultant senior în cadrul Diviziei Internaționale a Profiles International și a petrecut aproape toată cariera în poziții manageriale de vânzări și marketing. După mai mulți ani alături de Imensis Calculatoare și Hewlett Packard și-a înființat propria companie de consultanță în vânzări. Activitatea de consultanță l-a adus în contact cu Profiles International în urmă cu 14 ani. Deiric McCann este autorul a 4 cărți de business și are peste 1000 de articole publicate în întreaga lume. Cea mai mare pasiune a sa este însă oratoria. Deiric McCann participă ca speaker la evenimente, conferințe, seminare, workshop-uri de 2 sau de 3 ori pe lună și a dinamizat audiențe între 300 și 1000 de participanți în peste 800 de speech-uri în întreaga lume.
Până Deiric se montează, ca să spun așa, știu că sună rău în limba română, vă aduc aminte că astăzi mai avem o tragere la sorți pentru 10 ședințe de coaching. Cine a uitat să-și pună aici cartea de vizită, să ridice mâna. Dacă mă plimb acum, îmi puneți repede cărțile de vizită până Deiric se pregătește? Hai! Repede, pentru că veți beneficia la sfârșitul acestei zile de tragere la sorți. Cele 2 ședințe de coaching, 10, vor fi oferite de Anta și de Diana. O să le cunoașteți mai încolo. Scuze? Nu uitați, cine nu participă, nu câștigă, da? Știți aia cu n-am noroc la loto că nu câștig. Știți de ce, da? Că nu pui bilet. Cine mai? Trimiteți-o din mână în mână până la mine. Așa, bravo, super. Cine are mai multe, poate să-și încerce norocul. Eu mă uit ce băgați aici, oricum. Cine mai are, cine mai dorește, cine mai poftește. Așa, Max Relax, lăsăm să intre. N-am lăsat data trecută. Mai e cineva? Am sărit pe cineva? Trimite-o, te rog frumos. Fără frică, ne ajutăm unii pe alții. Că doar lucrăm în resurse umane. Așa? Bravo. Super. Mersi mult. E sigură? Da? Bine. O să ți-o dăm înapoi dacă vrei. Dau cauz tu, da? Că nu-ți decât vreo 200 și ceva de cărți de vizită aici, așa că... Opa, perfect. Bravo. Hai, să le strângem. Lilia, ai făcut o treabă extraordinară. E datorită ție se umple bolul ăsta, nu datorită mie. Să știi. Zici tu 4, că 13 număr cu inima. Nu, zi 4 în loc de 3. Poți să zici 4 în loc de 3. Sau 2. Așa simți tu? Lasă 3. Deci avem 13 ședințe de coaching, din care 3 sunt oferite de Lilia aici de față. Cine dă mai mult? Că suntem ca la licitație. Mai are cineva dorința să fie sprijinit în dezvoltare? Am să zic coach-uit, dar mi-era frică să nu greșesc cuvântul. Sorry, boss, do you? I don't want to say some different things. Okay, Deiric McCann.
I want you to notice what happened when I rang that bell. Okay? The most obvious thing was the room came to a new sort of attention. You started looking my direction, physically. You went quieter. Some of you looked puzzled. And that was the obvious outside effect of ringing that bell. But inside every single one of you, every single one of us, something happened when I rang that bell. And I have no way of knowing what happened inside you when you heard that bell. Sorry. I am oh my God. That was really bad. This one? Okay.
Tehnologia.
Every language. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So, when you heard the bell, everybody came to a new kind of attention. That was the obvious thing that happened.
But inside, every single one of us, oh my God, I love technology. Oh my God, I feel like God up here. I have come. But inside every one of you, you also reacted. And I cannot tell what went on inside you when you heard that bell. For some of you, you may have said, did that Irish guy just ring a Tibetan meditation bell? Oh my God, get me out of here. So while outwardly you appeared to be settling and coming to attention, inwardly you were cringing and looking for the closest door. Okay? Some of you may have said, oh my God, the Irish guy just rang a little Tibetan meditation bell. This is going to be good. I can't know what happened inside you, but what happened inside you is a demonstration of a singularly remarkable capability that, as far as we know, we are the first species on this planet to possess. And that is the simple ability to be able to observe what's going on outside of us, and at the same time observe ourselves inside, to see how we're reacting to something outside, to be in two places at the one time, to have meta-attention. And that is a unique capability, and it's a unique capability that we as business people and leaders can turn into a unique ability to be an altogether better leader. So today, many times, I'm going to use the phrase, what did you notice? Let me start my timing. I'll ask you, what did you notice? And when I ask you, what do you notice, what I'm looking for is for you just to stop and think in that moment and drop into yourself and say, do I feel hot or cold? Do I feel comfortable or settled? Do I feel any sort of sensation in my body? What's going through my head? Is my hair standing on the back of my neck? Whatever. When I say, what did you notice? I'll be asking you to pull upon that capability to drop inside yourself and be attentive. We are the first species in billions of years of evolution on this planet to be able to do this. And this is the entire message of my presentation today. My message is, you need to pay attention. Now, how many people here have anything to do with selling? So you're in marketing or in sales. Okay, so about maybe, I don't know, 10% of the audience. Let me say, how many of the people who are left ever have to convince anybody that their idea is a good one? Okay, we all do it, right? At some stage we all have to sell. Let me tell you the hardest audience to sell to. These people. These are household names, tremendously successful because they do not give their money away easily. If they give you money, it's because they have done an analysis that says, I'll get a better return giving these people my money than I could putting it in a bank or giving it to DMAC. So they've made a judgment that anything they invest in is a good investment, will get a good return on investment. Every single one of the organizations up here have invested in making their leaders and their people more mindful. They didn't do that because they're wackos. They didn't do it because they're spiritual people. They didn't do it because they bought into some 2,500-year-old technology. They did it because it made commercial sense. And I say that to you simply because some of you will come to this presentation today and you'll have preconceptions about what I'm going to talk about. And we, as humans, we are either generally open or closed. We get an idea, we analyze it, and we decide what our position is. Here's what I'm asking you to do today. Consider that these people must have had darn good reason to invest in what we're talking about today. And just allow me to have the benefit of an open mind for about an hour and 20 minutes. And at the end you can say, I'm closing it all up again, and you didn't sell me. Okay? Now, what is mindfulness? Sometimes it's easier to describe something by describing what it's not. So let's look at mindlessness, which is the opposite of mindfulness. And this is where I'm going to need your help. If you've ever stood in front of an audience and you've said, help me out, and nothing happened, you know how horrible that is. Don't do it to me. I'm a nice guy. Help me out. I'm going to put some numbers up. We are going to add them as a group, out loud. And I really need this to be done out loud. So, as I put a number up, I want you to go 1,000. And then add the next one, 1,000 and... No, it's not 5,000. So let's just take another look at that if you don't mind. Let's go again. Because I know that it's early in the morning. Some of you haven't had your coffee. So let's go through this just one more time to see if we can get it right. So we got 1,000. Come on, louder, louder. For the recording, make me look good. Now you get that. I mean, the reality was we got 1,000, 1040, 2040, 304, or 2070, 3070, 3090, 4090, and then most of the brains in the room went and said 5,000, when in fact it was 4,100. For a moment, you were mindless. What happened was it went 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and around 3,000 your brain switched off and said, I know where this is going, all about 4,000, 5,000. He must think I'm stupid. You switched off. You became mindless. If you had been mindful, if your attention had been fully on this, you would have resisted the autopilot and you'd have said 4,100 and nobody would have heard you because the rest of them were all saying 5,000. Take a look at this one. Pick a card, any card, focus on that card and look into my eyes. Okay? Is your card gone? Magic, right? No, absolutely not. Mindless. Because in actual fact, none of the cards are in the second picture. What I've done is I've taken them all away. But by giving you a certain instruction, I diverted your attention so that when you get to this one, and you do this with your kids, they will think you are just wonderful. It worked, and not just your kids. For a moment, you're mindless. You didn't take in all of the information that was available to take in. And we do it all the time. We call it habit. And sometimes we're very proud. We say, oh, I can do that practically on autopilot. You know, I can do that without thinking. That's exactly what you're doing. You're doing it without thinking. And most of the time, that's not a problem. But sometimes there are more serious consequences to becoming mindless. Let me give you a clear example.
Urged at the moment, the Spanish train left the tracks near Santiago de Compostela in what is being described as one of the country's worst rail disasters. 78 people are now confirmed dead, with 130.
Now, in actual fact, 79 people died in that last year in Santiago de Compostela. A train went into a bend too fast and went off the track. We all saw it. 79 people were killed. They were killed because of mindlessness. They were killed because the driver, who was an experienced, mature, responsible adult, not a boy trying to race his train, because he was on his phone, because he was engaged with something else, and he went on autopilot, and he had done that trip so many times, he had gone into that bend so many times, it had come out perfectly so many times, he did not notice that he was doing twice the speed that was the maximum speed for that bend, and 79 people died. Now, happily, the majority of us in the room today don't work in jobs where becoming mindful or mindless for a moment results in 79 people dying. But you know, in lots and lots of ways, it results in lots and lots of small cuts. And you've heard the expression, the death of 1,000 cuts. The lack of attention is the worst contagion we have in our society today, because we have so many things demanding our attention. Our phones, our iPads, our computers, our email, and so on and so forth. So attention is a very, very short supply. Now, so let me give you a layman's definition. I have purposely chosen not to give you the technical definition of mindfulness. This is mindfulness as it applies to you and I in business. It is being in the here and now. Being right here, watching what's going on. It is not, and here's the important thing for us and the people who work for us, it is not being lost in thought, it's not being distracted, and it's not being overwhelmed by difficult emotions. The majority of people in this world today spend the majority of their time overwhelmed by difficult emotions. That's why we have such an epidemic of stress in the Western world. Mindfulness is a cure for that problem. If you're being mindless, if you're not being mindful, you're automatically running on autopilot. You're assuming that the way things worked before is the way they'll work in the future. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. You're coming into the bend that, the bend that you've traveled through 20 times, 30 times, 100 times before, and because you've done it successfully, you're not paying attention to what's going on. It means that you're working off old information. In a world, by the way, that is moving so quickly that old information can be 60 seconds old in your world or my world, right? It means that you are blind to the current context. It means you are behaving on instinct. If you're mindful, you're doing the opposite. If you're mindful, you're situated right here. You're watching what's going on. You're doing what my colleague said, you're being aware, because it all starts with awareness, watching what's going on in the moment. It means that your responses to current information are current information. You're sensitive to what's going on right now, and you can choose if you want to say, hey, I have a pattern, I have a program for this that I can use, or you can say, no, this is slightly different. And here's the important thing. And I'll use a great quotation later from a Harvard professor that talks to this. If you are in the moment, experience your life right now, you are by definition engaged. And what do we see in almost all of the presentations since we got here at the beginning of this conference? We want engaged people. Mindful people, people who are in the moment, paying attention to what's going on, are engaged. So if you're a leader, one of the professors that I quote later on says, by definition, your role is to distribute mindfulness within your organization, which is an interesting thought. But here's an interesting point. First thing is, no matter what you're doing, where you're doing it, whether you're at work, you're at home, you are either doing it mindfully or you're doing it mindlessly. It's a binary situation. You cannot be both. You're either here in the moment or you're off in the past or away in the future. You're one or the other. It's binary. And look at all of the studies that have been done in the last 30, 40 years, and what you find is everything. Whether it's creativity, whether it's health, competence, psychological well-being. When you're mindful, it's better. When you're living in the moment, you're better. You are your best possible self. So, that's why people like this are investing shed loads of money into creating mindful environments. LG has committed a couple of billion this year. Samsung have rolled out a program to bring to 225,000 people worldwide programs to help them become mindful. Why? Not because they're really good corporate citizens, and I'm sure they are, but because they have worked out from the research, people who are mindful are less stressed. People who are less stressed are more engaged. People that are more engaged are more productive, and people that are more productive are more profitable. It works for business. And it produces, in every single situation that you look at, the studies, it produces results you would not believe. This is 6,400 people in If Insurance in Sweden. You can read this as well as I can, but let me ask you, can you think of any other way that you could get so broad and so deep an impact upon the people who work for you? Look at that, 88% of participants reported a greater ability to stay focused. Most of us, because of our telephones, our email, and everything is around us, we have the attention span of a goldfish. You know the goldfish, 1 second attention span. Oh, look at that Irish guy with the big nose. Round again. Oh, look, there's an Irish guy with a big nose. Oh. Actually, I wondered, when I saw your video, I thought, I would never get my portrait done like that. Because I know that all there'll be on the page is a nose. On both pages. And the rest they just won't see. That's by the by. Transport for London are a huge organisation responsible for implementing the strategy for that fast-growing city for transport. Again, I think it was 1,250 people. Look at this. Days off for stress, anxiety, and depression, which is the epidemic in our Western world, fell by 71%. Absences for all conditions have 80% reported improvements in our relationships. There's a great English expression. Happy wife, happy life. If your relationship improves, pretty much everything improves. This stuff works. That's why these people are investing in it. And what's really wonderful about it is it's very, very easy to implement. So how do we bring this to leadership? Why did I call this mindful leadership or being a mindful leader? Let's roll the clock back. And let's look at the modern age of leadership development. The modern age of leadership development started in the 70s, when we had the birth of the competency model. The idea that every leadership position, every position indeed, had a set of easily, or at least readily, identifiable behaviors which, if deployed by the people in that position, would get the results that were required to get. So we said, we can look at leaders, figure out how they need to behave in order to get the best possible results, then see if they're doing that, and if not, help them to be able to deploy those behaviors. And that has been the golden age of leadership development. There has been more good work done in the 70s on how we consistently, in a structured manner, develop leaders than there was in the previous 100 years. Now, I was about to ask a question. I don't have to ask it because I see very few of you are wearing headphones. And that tells me that you have gone through the pain of learning a language. You've gone through, and it is a pain, right? It's not something that, well, very few people find it pleasurable. It is hard work. And it goes through, learning a language goes through the same learning cycle as almost anything else. On day one, when you take off, let's say on the x-axis, on the y-axis, I beg your pardon, you've got amount of knowledge that you have of your new language. And on the x-axis, you've got time. On day two, you've taken off like a rocket. Because, you know, from the first moment you start learning, the learning curve is like this. Today you know twice as much as you knew yesterday, and day 3 you knew twice as much as you knew on day 2, and you just say to yourself, as I did, "My God, honey," I said to my wife, 3 months' time, I'll be speaking French like de Gaulle. It's easy. I'm learning so much. And what happens? You take off like a rocket, and then you hit that plateau. You're still doing the same thing, same amount of work, applying the same principles, and it's like you're pouring all of this work in, and nothing is happening. And you're on that plateau, and that plateau tends to kill people like me. And it did. Ask Stefan about my French. I gave up. So I gave up. My wife kept going. What people discover when they hit that plateau is what got us here won't get us there. They have to start doing something new. And so you start maybe getting out and talking to French people. And you start listening to French television. And you start using the little bit you learn. And suddenly you hit this takeoff point, and again you're off like a rocket. And eventually you plateau, and it goes like that. Well, leadership development has plateaued. The competency model, the return on investment we get from pure exploitation of the competency model as an approach for leadership development has plateaued. It doesn't mean it's irrelevant. It just means that it's no longer enough. We no longer get the same return as we expected to in the past. Now, lots of the researchers have been doing a lot of work to see where do we go from here. And one of those is a think tank, I think they're out of Belgium, called the Center for Creative Leadership. So they're a research organization, and they've come up with a model which they call, very imaginatively, I'll show you the name now in a moment, but they've come up with a model that says, hey, you've still got to have competencies and behaviors as part of your mix. But there are other things that you have to consider as well if you want to get the results you're looking for. So they say you cannot throw out the baby with the bathwater. You must continue with this, and you have to consider three other things: circuitry, inner content, and conscious engagement. And they called their model, with such enormous imagination, the Beyond Competencies model. You can imagine somebody sat up all night brainstorming on that, and then the clever ones went to bed, and somebody went to press. The Beyond Competency model. Give me a break, okay? So the Beyond Competency model, really, this is a fantastic white paper for anybody involved in developing leaders. And if you haven't seen it, let Doro or one of his people know. He has a copy for me, and he'll get a copy to you. Now, let's talk about what they talk about, their extra elements in there. What they're saying is, in the last 30 years, we have learned more about who we are and how we're wired and how we're put together than we did in the rest of human history. And we have to consider that when we go to develop people. And the first part they say is we have to consider is your circuitry. I love that. Now, I really like that. Circuitry. You have to consider the way you're wired. You have to consider the fact that you are a physical, chemical, and urological machine. That you are functioning inside a unit that operates in a lot of situations on autopilot. Your body just keeps firing. It keeps working physically, chemically, and neurologically. And it was bred to do one job and one job only, really. Or at least it was bred to do many jobs, but the one that it remembers was protect me. Keep me safe. Because at the time when this machine, your body, your brain, started to develop, there were life-threatening situations all around us. In a couple of million years, we've risen to the top of the tree. We are not a threat to everybody else. We are a threat to ourselves. We have no longer any real life-threatening situations. But you know what? That tiny little reptile brain inside our heads that was developed several 100 million years ago doesn't know that. And we need to fix that. The good news is that all of the research in the last 30 years, and by the way, my friend Dr. Scott Hamilton told me after my last presentation, he said, Eric, go do a weight wise. He said, you got to tell him about cortical remapping and things like that. And apparently, 30 years ago, this is where this research started, with stroke victims. He started looking at stroke victims, and with a stroke victim, you've essentially got parts of the brain that have been burnt away. And what the researchers discovered was the brain rebuilt those burnt away parts very often in a different part of the brain, brick by brick, and recreated that functionality in a process they called cortical remapping. And what we discovered was all of the thinking we had up to then that our brain was a fixed thing that we were born with and we died with was wrong. It's something that grows and matures according to what we feed into it. It is plastic. Now, my colleague before said awareness is absolutely critical, and I think you absolutely nailed it, because for leadership and successful leaders, they rely on self-awareness. And if you live inside an organism which is working away doing things, making you feel certain ways, making you react certain ways, and you're not aware of it, well then you're behaving in ways that are hurting you. You need to become aware of it. Let me do a quick losing of the jacket first off. because it's warm up here. Let me do a quick observation test. I'm going to show you a little piece of movie. It takes about 30 seconds. I just want you to watch very closely, and at the end I'm going to ask you 3 or 4 questions. Okay, so just pay attention very closely. Make sure you don't miss anything, and I'll ask you 3 or 4 questions at the end of this. You notice? What did you notice? Some of you smiled because you knew this film before, and yet you all reacted the same way. Notice what you noticed. Tell me one thing, anybody. What did you notice in the moment that that happened? What did you notice? Anything? Which? The car disappeared. Okay. What did you notice inside you? What happened? You were scared. How did that feel? What did it feel like? How did you know you were scared? You felt. Okay. Anybody feel the hair sticking up on the back of the neck? Did anybody move in their chair? Let me tell you, in case you didn't notice, 99% of you moved in your chairs. Even the few over here who had seen it before went, What happened in that moment? What happened in that moment was a small part of your brain, you've heard of it, called the amygdala, a small part of the brain that was born in our ancestors and designed to protect us from life-threatening situations, immediately routed all of the blood in your body, started moving it towards your muscles so that you could either run away or fight. You could protect yourself. It switched off your digestive process. It switched off every unnecessary process. It flooded your system with adrenaline and noradrenaline. Okay? It got your pineal gland flooding you and getting your muscles all tensed up, your heart rate increased, you felt the hair stand on the back of your neck, and you were ready for action. You were one of those, if you're a female, you were one of those mothers who, seeing the child trapped under the car, ran over and picked up half a ton of car and saved the child. Because your body got you ready to do it. Now, here's the problem. We don't, very often, meet genuinely life-threatening situations in our day-to-day work. You logically knew, 2 seconds after you got that fright, you said, this is not a danger to me. But your heart was still racing. Your digestion was still shut down. You were still flooded with adrenaline, and you had expended, in that moment, an enormous amount of energy. This little guy here, I don't recommend you do this at home, but if you stuck some pencils into your ear, and pencils into your eyes, where those pencils cross would be 2 little almond-shaped organs. And that is just a simple clearing center that when it sees or hears a threat says, start the machine, get him going. So it was designed just so that you could fight, flight, or I love the rabbit's response, isn't it great? You can see me, you can see me. Freeze. Now, even though we don't live in a world where we face many physical threats, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the American military described the political environment as being VUCA. And this is a term that has found its way into the business world over the last 10 years. They said that we now live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And what you're seeing in all the business literature now is you're talking about VUCA this and VUCA that. And you think of the world that every one of us live in. Now, it is volatile, it is uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. And every single day we get triggered by things like that little fright. You get an envelope, drops into your hall, and it's from the tax authorities. Your heart starts racing, your digestion is switched off, noradrenaline is flooded through your system. It's not life-threatening, your brain says that, but your body is on high alert right away. And it leads to what, and I think this is one of the best expressions ever, it leads to the revving amygdala. Now, revving, for the translators in case it's an unusual one. If you sit into a car and it's not in gear, and you put your foot on the accelerator and it starts turning over, it starts doing revolutions, In English we would say we're revving the engine. And what are you doing when you rev the engine? You're making a lot of noise, creating a lot of pollution, you're putting wear and tear on the engine, you're burning fuel, and you're going nowhere useful. We get triggered so often in an average day that our amygdala never recovers back to relaxed. It's revving. And a tremendous amount of the people that work with you and work for you have an amygdala that has been triggered so often that they can no longer deal with it. First time the stressor occurs, no problem. Second time, because it burns an enormous amount of energy, yeah, I can cope with that. And eventually, the tank is empty. You sit there revving the engine, it's going nowhere, you're destroying the engine, you're burning fuel, eventually it's just dead. And that's what we call executive burnout. And an enormous amount of people are in this place right now. They have revving amygdalas. Look at the nature programs. You got 200 deer, and the tiger runs out, or the lion runs after the deer or the antelope, and he grabs one. The others don't stand there saying, oh my God, Jesus Christ, that could have been me. What if he had got me? Oh my God, thank God it was him. They don't, they just say, okay, that's over. And they go about their business, they switch it off. We don't. We're really clever when we think about it. Oh my God, what if I had got a big bill from the last week? What if that was bad news? Did anybody ever call you late at night, unexpected, and you had that same reaction? And you maybe even said, oh Jesus, what's wrong? That's my mother. Oh my God, it must be my dad. Yeah, your mind goes there. Well, this is a great example of that tiny little part of your brain, which is very, very primitive and knows nothing, being utterly and completely hijacking the part of your brain that knows everything. My mindfulness coach uses this analogy. He says, we've developed over the last several 100,000 years this huge brain, you know, this piece here, which right behind your forehead is everything you are, who you are, your personality, whether you're happy, you're sad, how you deal with the world, the intelligent part that knew, he was just playing a joke on us. Seconds after that you got that fright, it knew he's just playing a joke on us. Well, with the revving amygdala, what happens is that tiny little primitive part takes control of that big elephantine part of the brain that knows that it wasn't a threat, and knows it wasn't a problem, and it hijacks it. And he talks about it being like a little boy riding an elephant. We get continually hijacked. Now that is a really bad effect. If you look at, this is the part of the brain I'm talking about. That whole front. If you've ever dealt with anybody, I used to be involved with a charity in Ireland for acquired head injuries. If you've ever dealt with somebody who's had a really traumatic injury to that sort of part of their brain, they can change from being one personality to another, from being happy to utterly depressed, from being one person to being another person entirely. This is really who you are. And this right-hand side here, this right frontal lobe, is the part of your brain where when you're stressed, or you're sad, or you're under pressure, or you're worried, where if you went on an MRI scan, you would see lots of electrical activity. And when you're worried, and you're anxious, and you're stressed, this part of your brain lights up like New Year's Eve firework display. And what's interesting is, when it lights up, it makes you feel worried, anxious, and sad. And when you feel worried, anxious, and sad, it lights up. And when it lights up, you feel worried. And so, if you've ever had that experience of being in a great place 1 minute, and one thing goes wrong, and you go, oh, and you go from elation to depression, that's what happened. You got into the loop. Now, the problem with that for leaders is it creates what the psychologists call an avoidance approach to things, an avoidance frame of mind. That is, when we're continually anxious and worried and sad, we tend to be living a life that is informed by the need to avoid risk and danger. We are continually just worried about what we can do to keep ourselves safe. That is not a good place for a leader. Avoidance frame of mind. Activity in the right correlates to an avoidance frame of mind. Left-hand side correlates to when you're feeling alert, anxious, enthusiastic, joyful. And again, you've got that closed loop. When you feel energized and you feel joyful and you feel alert, that part of you lights up like the 4th of July in the United States. And when it lights up, you feel energized, you feel joyful, and you feel alert. And when you feel that way, it lights up, and so on and so forth. And the extent to which we are generally more joyful and enthusiastic or worried and anxious is the extent to which we have is a direct correlate to the balance between the activity of those two sides of the brain. Why am I bothering to tell you that? Well, let me just tell you as well. The person who lives with more activity on that side of their brain is by default more reward-oriented, they're approach-oriented, they're looking for opportunities. They're not looking for the bogeyman around every corner, they're looking for opportunities. So, the reason I wanted to tell you that is because all of that research points at what we're talking about today. And now I'm going to say the M word. Mindfulness meditation has been shown over the last 35 or 40 years to increase left frontal lobe activity, to increase the activity in the part of your brain that makes you energetic, enthusiastic, and joyful, to reduce the activity in the right frontal lobe, and to switch off the amygdala. A simple technique that can completely change, because the brain is plastic, the balance between the right and the left-hand mode. If you are somebody who, like me, suffers or suffered from that tendency to go into spirals down or spirals up, this is great news. There is control. You can take control of it. So here's our little control center, our little amygdala we're talking about. And generally speaking, what happens here, you get that fight, some noise comes along, something comes along, the boss sends you an email and says, come to my office, and it sets off the alarm bells, the fear response starts, your heart starts beating, and so on and so forth. However, if you can start conditioning and getting the frontal part of your brain working more effectively, what you do is increase the ability to take some of that traffic that would normally trigger that fear response, normally trigger that amygdala, and take control of it. You can create a situation where your amygdala only switches on when it should switch on. Because there are times when it's useful to be frightened. I'll tell you what, when you're making a presentation, the person who says, yeah, I'm perfectly ready for this presentation, I have no stress, they're going to screw up. Every time. You should be a little bit stressed, because then you'll be paying attention. So there are times when it's appropriate when you want that. So that was your circuitry. Then they talk in this model about inner content. Now inner content is that next level up from the circuitry. If you like, it's almost like the operating system sitting over the hardware. And it's really about the raw emotions and the gut feelings and the inner dialogue that goes on inside you. Because every one of us lives with an inner dialogue. We all have a commentary talking about, what's this Irish guy talking about? Look at the size of that nose. I wonder what's going on at home. We have that. And it's a good thing in a lot of situations, but it can become a very bad thing. It can become a bad thing in situations where we allow it to fall into what the Americans would call shoulda, woulda, coulda. Something goes wrong and you say, oh my God, you know, I really should have done this and I should have done that. So instead of being here and saying, deal with the problem, move right back into the past that you can do nothing about and say, oh, I really should have done this and I wish I had, and if only. Or, if only, I hope this happens. We move into the future, which we can't influence by thinking about it, except for what we do here. So we continually got these raw emotions roiling through us, driving this dialogue. And when people talk about having gut feelings, you gotta listen to that. You live in your gut. Your consciousness is distributed through your body, and your gut is very frequently a great indication of your emotional state. And so you've got these emotions rushing through you. They are affecting your, you've got this chemical machine working underneath. That's driving the emotions, which is driving the inner dialogue, which determines how you respond day to day. And again, I'll come back to my colleague and say, I'm going to paraphrase you. And she said, it's, broadly speaking, it's not what happens to you that's important, it's how you react to what happens to you that determines your fate. And these narratives, what's going on in our head at any one time, this inner dialogue, very frequently on autopilot determines where we're going because we're not aware enough to take control of that dialogue. How many people here have any sort of managerial or leadership responsibilities? Anything at all? Okay. So this has been you at some stage over the last couple of weeks. That goes with the territory. Something always goes wrong. And I don't know what it is, but something, let's use the American expression, something hits the fan. Okay? And where do we go most? The majority of people that you talk to, they immediately zoom into either the past or the future. Okay? The future is the most common one. Salesperson gets a call that says, you know that 500 grand deal that I've been promising you for 8 months? We're not doing it. Oh my God, what if they don't buy the other one? What if all my other clients call and say that they don't want to buy? What if my boss finds out and I lose my job? What if I lose my job and I can't pay my mortgage? What if I can't pay my mortgage and they throw me out of the house? And what if I end up on the street and I end up having to sell my body? I won't make much money that way. Oh my God. What if? Catastrophizing. Something goes wrong, and what do? We are hardwired to catastrophize, or we go back to if only. Oh God, I wish I had sent him 6 bottles of wine at Christmas. Maybe I should have given him a little gift somewhere along the way, if only. And our reaction in general, I cannot remember, it was Mrs. Dima, it was Ella who said to me, yes, Michelle, when you get into that stress situation, what do? You speed up. I don't know why, it doesn't make any sense, but you get stressed, what do you start doing? Instead of doing what you should do, which is slow it down, you start going even faster, and you spin that wheel even faster, and you get even further into the future, in the worst possible, or back in the past, doing things you can't do, and again it ends up in burnout. What about this? Have you ever, with one of the people you loved, or somebody who works for you, been in a situation where your wife, your husband, your lover, whomever, somebody that you care for, says something innocent, and before you know where you are, you're 2 sentences down the road reacting in a tirade, an absolute rage. You're asking, how could you possibly say that to me? I am one of the best. And you know, when you're 10 seconds in, holy shit, she didn't mean that. Well, what do? You don't say, oh, I'm sorry, I just realized you didn't mean it. Sorry about that, honey. I'm totally my fault. You don't know. You say, I've started, so I'll finish. It's what we do. And you defend the indefensible. Somebody comes in, they say something, and it happens all the time. We get triggered. What happens is we get stimulated. Our amygdala takes over because it's revving, and we react. It's the most normal thing in the world. And when you're stressed, it's the worst. And the people, unfortunately, that we tend to really hit out at are the people we love. Because you can't do it to the boss. Well, you can't do it to the boss at work. You can do it to the boss at home and potentially get away with it. Whereas in an ideal situation, what you'd want to do is, okay, what's actually going on? Not what might happen in the future, what happened in the past, what's actually going on? And slow the whole thing down, think about it, and then perhaps react. Or respond, I should say, as opposed to react. So in an ideal world, what you'd say is, oh, he just said X. I wonder what that means. And this is the piece that's missing in a world where our amygdala are continually stressed, are continually revving, and the only thing that's missing is awareness. If we can bring awareness to this moment, and we can practice bringing awareness to this moment, nothing will ever trigger us. That's nirvana. But all we want to do is even reduce the number of things that trigger us so that we become aware of it, and then we can, and I'm going to use your word again, set an intention. We can decide what we want to do. We can say, oh, what I need to do is this, and then respond. Instead of autopilot, we have to take control of that. And that's what all of the people in the wellness industry are talking about now when they talk about resilience. Think about it. Resilience is the ability to be here and now, so that when something happens, you say, what's the best possible response in this moment? People who are resilient don't get hijacked by negative situations and emotions. The last part of the model, this beyond competency model, is conscious engagement. They said, you need to recognize this is running automatically. And the only way you can change that is bring awareness to it. And the only way you can bring awareness to your emotions, well, not the only way, but the easiest way, is to be able to become aware of what's going on inside you in the machinery. How your gut feels. What you're feeling around the larger part of your body, your torso. We'll talk about that in a moment. Because if you can build that awareness, then you can build that ability to respond instead of simply react. Now, how do you become more mindful? Well, you know what? It's actually relatively easy. Because mindfulness is just about choosing where you place your attention. Problem is, most of us don't. So, if that's your attention, okay, typically, here's what happens. You say, Anna's sitting there and she's saying, oh, there's Deiric who's doing a great presentation there. I'm really enjoying this. Oh, did my phone just go beep beep? I wonder, was that a LinkedIn message? Oh, look at the dress on that lady over there. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? My God, it's hot in here. Where's the heat? And so, and our attention bounces around like that. And our telephones do that to us. We know when we come into the room, I want to listen to the guy at the front because I'm interested in that. But our attention is continually stolen from us. Mindfulness is about awareness. Awareness is simply about having some way to say, here's where I want to pay attention. Here's what I want to focus on, and that's where you leave it. Having a way to say, here's where I want to pay attention, and realize, oh, I've lost attention, I've lost awareness, and bring it back. That's all mindfulness is, that's all focus is. Because the reality is, all of this macho stuff that went on over the last 25 years about leaders being great multitaskers is BS. And you can look that one up. I am not going to use the words. It's rubbish. We cannot multitask. We are single processor machines. We're either doing one task or we're doing another. If we're doing 5 tasks, we do a little bit of that, and then leave it, and then a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. It's very inefficient. It's much more efficient to do this one, get it done, and move to the next one. To put our attention where we want. So that's what we need to train. So how do we do it? How do we go about that training? Well, it's like a gym. If you were in a job where it required you to lift heavy weights and it required you to have really good biceps, Marius, if it required you to have really, really good biceps, you'd have a choice. You could say, I learn on the job. That's going to hurt. Okay? Because the first time you do it, you're not ready to it. That's going to hurt. So what you sensibly would do, you say, I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes in the gym doing repetitions of the action that I need to do in the real world. Well, mindfulness is a gym for the mind. It's doing repetitions of the activity that you need to do to continually focus your attention, to learn where to place your awareness, to give you the confidence to say, I can focus anywhere I want for a long period of time. And because that's not the way we're wired by default in our society today, it can be tricky. How do you get there? Well, we're going to look at 3 ways. One is through the mind, one is the body, and the other is through the mind and the body. A combination of it. And I'm going to give you a flavor because this is not something you can talk about, this is something you have to experience. So we're going to experience about 1 minute of training your mind for focus. And because you've been listening to me for a while, I'm going to let you hear an American gentleman called Marty Brasov. And he wrote a book on 1 moment meditation. And he spoke about a very simple technique which he's going to share with you. And then we're going to try it out, and then we're going to see how it, what your experience of it was. So for a moment, just listen to what he has to say, and I'll come back to you just in a moment.
Since you're watching this video, I'll bet you want to meditate, but don't have time. Maybe you've tried to meditate, but had some trouble. Maybe you had a wonderful experience meditating over there, but just can't find that same feeling over here. Well, my name is Marty Borison, And in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the technique of one-moment meditation. Then you can meditate whenever you need to. Like when you're feeling stressed, or feeling angry. Maybe you're having trouble sleeping, or you're feeling anxious, or you just need a new idea. Although one-moment meditation is ultimately about meditating in a moment, we're going to start with a minute. We start with a minute because a moment goes by so quickly that it's very hard to notice. But a minute is like a moment with handles on it. You know where it begins and where it ends, so it's easier to grasp. If you're ready, we'll do the basic minute now. You might want to shut the door, or at least tell people you're not available for the next minute. You don't have to tie yourself in knots for this. Just sit with your legs planted firmly on the floor. Try.
Okay, so now we're past the theory. He's going to start giving you a few instructions, and work with me and just follow his instructions. I'll come back in a moment, but just be ready to do what he suggests you do.
I just sit up straight, but don't be rigid. It's as if your head were being lifted up away from the weight of the world. Think of it as cosmic traction. Now put your hands in any position that's balanced, symmetrical, and still. Like this, or like this. During the minute, simply focus on your breathing, moment by moment. Of course, even in the space of a minute, you will get distracted. That's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. But as soon as you notice that you're distracted, just think, and bring your mind back to your breathing. I'll ring a bell so you know when to start and when to finish. Ready?
So, simple task. In a moment he's going to ask you to close your eyes. And just follow your breathing. Just pay attention to your breathing. And you're going to lose focus on that very, very quickly. This is a kind of unnatural environment. And just the moment you do, don't say, damn, I lost focus. Damn, I'm useless at this. Just notice and bring it back. And here's the point. In that moment when you notice that you've lost focus on your breathing, you've just become more mindful. That's the focus. You've just decided from your awareness to bring your focus back to where you wanted it. This is the repetition we're talking about. So let's let him give us 1 minute to do just that.
Then close your eyes. But one more thing. It's okay to smile. And go. As you open your eyes, notice how you feel right now. Maybe a little bit refreshed.
And let me ask you, anybody, what did you notice in that 1 minute? Anything? The silence, yeah, the silence, the quiet, okay? It's slightly unnatural to close your eyes in an audience of 250 people, so that's probably not the most settled you've ever been. The silence.
Joy.
Which?
Joy.
Joy. Joy. Great. Fantastic. Somebody else.
It was very long.
It seemed very long. Who said that? Isn't a minute a long time? And yet, a minute of that, taken in the middle of a busy day, can have an extraordinary impact upon you as a long break without having an extraordinary impact upon your day. Great observation. Somebody else. You wanted to sleep. Okay, and you know what? There's a message in that as well. There's possibly a message in that as well. Did anybody notice that despite the fact that you were very intent upon keeping your focus upon your breath, it lasted about 2 seconds? Somebody banged the door and you went, oh, what's that? Oh, and here's the secret. Here's the secret of this. This is the repetitions. In the moment that you notice that you've lost attention upon the breath, and you return it without judging yourself, without beating yourself up, just becoming aware and bringing it back, you have become more mindful. You've started something in that simple exercise. The process is really, really simple. I won't talk about attention just for a moment, but this is really that gym exercise that I spoke about. You want in the real world to be able to place your attention on that presentation that you're developing for next week, or on that report that has to go to the client, or on this email that you're sending, and you want to place it there, and you want to leave it there, and you know it wanders. So you go into your mental gym, and you follow your breath, and you start off being focused upon your breath in the first second. And I guarantee you, every single person loses attention within a few seconds. And you notice, because in that quiet comes the worry, and the fantasizing, and the rumination, and your mind just takes off. You go, blast! They said, focus on the breath. You retain the attentional focus, and you're back. And in doing that, you're doing repetitions. In doing that, you're training attention. When I say I want my attention here, I mean I want it here. When I say I want my attention on my breath, I want my attention on my breath. When I say I'm going to focus on this presentation, I mean on this presentation. And doing those repetitions is exactly the same as doing the physical repetitions in the gym. Ultimately, what happens is you build that attentional muscle. Distractions become a lesser factor. They are always there. They will always be there, but they become less of a factor. And you can do that with 1 minute. 1 minute can make all the difference in the world. And in fact, on iPhone, you can get an app that at regular intervals throughout the day will go bing and remind you just to take 1 minute. Now, sometimes it's not convenient to close your eyes. Sometimes you're sitting with your boss and you're saying, sorry, that's my bell. I'll be back. It's really not convenient. So you probably have to tune in and find another way of doing things. And there is another way of doing things. Now, people who have seen me speak on body language have probably seen this, this graphic before. But let me ask you a question. Which of these wheels, this one being the left, the grey one on the left, or the blue one on the right, which one is driving the other? And you do it as a vote. How many people think the grey one is driving the blue one? Okay. How many people think the blue one is driving the grey one? How many people think you couldn't possibly know? Okay. The reality is everybody's right. The grey one is driving the blue one is driving the grey one, and we don't know which one is moving first. What we know for certain is if that one moves, that one moves, and if that one moves, that one moves. And there is a very direct correlation between that, let me just stop this guy, and what goes on in your body. Emotions roil through, they run through your body continually. The latest research says that we experience as many as 27 different emotions in an hour. Most of which, by the way, were not a hello. I'm here. Thank you. My dog lost his way. Most of us are not aware of them. And it's very hard to get a grip. It's very hard to stop an emotion because almost by observing it, you change it. The great thing is that your emotions are also experienced as bodily sensations. Every bodily sensation that you have expresses itself as an emotional reaction somewhere inside you, and vice versa. If you get hungry, do you ever notice you're more cranky? Do you ever notice that you can really get upset with people when your blood sugar falls down? You're feeling sick. Are you really patient when you're sick? Hell no. Are you really happy when you're... Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So one of the easiest ways to manage your emotions is to manage their physical manifestation. So one of the easiest ways to become mindful is through the body. I said we looked at the mind, which was we just looked at. Now let's look at how can you do that with the body. So a little bell rings on your phone and it says it's time to get mindful for a minute. You can't close your eyes because the boss is there. Here's what you can do. Assume the same position as you had before. So just get yourself sitting comfortably, not with your back against the chair, just sit upright. Now not stiff, but just relaxed and in a, what would I call it, an elegant posture. So not slumped or anything, but relaxed. Now, I want you just now to bring your attention to the soles of your feet. I don't want you to visualize them. I want you to reach out through your consciousness and feel them. So just feel the sensation of your feet inside your shoes. Feel the soles of your feet. Feel the way they press against the shoes, and the way the shoes press against the ground. You feel that? So don't visualize it, just if you reach out, you feel the sensations. You may feel a tingle, you might feel the weight of them, you might feel a sensation of gravity. They might be hot, they might be cold, they might be like mine, they might be sweating. Just reach out and feel those feet and to be aware of their existence. Just bring your attention to them. Now, some people have told me that they find it useful to imagine that they have roots growing out of the sole of their feet down into the ground and almost dragging them down. So you've got that sense of weight. So just be with that for a second and just feel that sensation. Now, you're sitting in a meeting and somebody's talking and you want to give them your full attention, but you're tired and it keeps wandering. One of the best ways to bring your awareness back into the moment is to find your seat or your feet. Just the act of becoming aware of your feet brings you back here and now. Bring your attention now to your seat. Let's say, I think I can know you well enough to say, to your ass. So bring your attention to your behind on the seat. So feel the sensation of where your behind comes in touch with the seat, where the cloth of your skirt or your trousers touches your legs. And just be aware of it, just feel it. You might feel again a sensation of gravity. One leg might be pushing more than the other. And just be aware of both the feet on the ground and your backside on the seat. In the moment that you do that, you're mindful. In a moment that you bring your attention like that to your physicality, you are back here and now. It's a tremendous technique when you're about to do a presentation. It's a tremendous technique if you're losing focus upon somebody, just to bring you back to the here and now. So physically, and all of the martial arts and the yoga people know this, they know that when you bring your awareness to your body, you bring your awareness into the present moment. Now, the best combination of all this is to use a combination of both the mind and the body. So you want to start doing those repetitions. You want to start really building that attention muscle. Use a combination of that physical or approach with the mental approach. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And I'm going to give you a practice that you can take away. I guarantee you, it's not a money-back guarantee because Dora doesn't give money-back guarantees. I guarantee you, invest this 5 minutes a day for 2 weeks. You will see a dramatic difference in your ability to place your attention. So what we're going to do is, first, I'm going to suggest to you, again, paying homage to your presentation, that before we do this 5 minutes, that you set an intention for what you want to achieve from it. And everything works better when you say, here's what I want to do. It might be, I just want to chill for a few minutes. Or, I just want to come into this room and lose this sense of tiredness. Or, I just want to learn this, or whatever. But set an intention. I just want to chill, perhaps. Then I'm going to suggest to you that you take 3 deep breaths. Don't do it yet. I'm going to do it for you in a moment. And that's because when your amygdala is triggered, It's the sympathetic nervous system which is set off. That's the, if you like, the machinery that gets you ready to fight or flight. When you start deep breathing in through your nose, out through your nose, you trigger the opposite system, the parasympathetic nervous system, which dampens that down. It has two values. One, it starts to make you feel calmer. But secondly, when you do it often enough, it sends this signal to your body, oh, she's doing those deep breaths. She's ready to chill. So it just gets you ready for it. So we're going to do that. Then I'm going to get you tuned to your seat and your feet. I'm going to bring you back into that moment, the seat and feet. You can try to half smile, if you like. Send some serotonin to your brain. You don't have to like that. And we're going to focus, and we're going to do a few minutes of watching the breath. So we're going to go through this, and then I'm going to say, close your eyes, and Radu is going to do some timing for me. And he's going to ring the bell at the end of a couple of minutes. So let's start it off. So just to yourself, get yourself into a nice seated position. Get yourself comfortable, but upright. Have your hands somewhere comfortable. Now, 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your nose. Just nice and gentle, your own pace. So. And as you're doing that, just become aware of your feet and your seat again. So just take those breaths, I'll use the expression, drop into your feet and your seat. Just let your attention drop into it. And now, close your eyes and watch your breath. Now I will talk to you every few seconds. Ignore me to the extent that you can. Watch your breath. When you lose attention, bring your attention back to the breath. So let's start that now. Thanks, Radu. You lose attention. Don't beat yourself up. Just return to the breath. That's progress. As you're following your breath, if you can, in the background, try to keep an awareness of your seat and your feet. Okay, so somebody, really quickly before it's gone, what did you notice? Anything? You went to sleep. It was a late night last night. Somebody else said something. You felt confident. Great, super. Somebody else.
And I was stuck the body a lot.
And you were?
Stuck with myself.
So there was internal chatter. Normal. And you know what? You start talking to yourself and saying, I wonder has everybody got their eyes closed in a room like this? Yeah, that's normal. Aren't they all looking at me? And then you go, forget that. Back to the breath. And obviously, doing that on your own is a slightly different experience to doing in a room full of people. Anybody else? Another observation?
Felt the body.
You felt the body. You'd be aware of the body. What was that like?
Very self-confident and still.
More still, more confident. You felt heavier. That's probably not something that was a good experience, was it? For a lady to say she felt heavier. No, I know what you meant. I know what you meant. And did you notice, by the way, that bringing the attention to the physical as well as the thoughts really kind of brings you down a little bit more? Let me suggest to you, I got you to close your eyes because there are so many distractions. When I stand at the back of the room before a presentation, I do a 2 or 3 minute version of that seat, feet, and the breathing with my eyes open because you'd think I was weird if I was standing there with my eyes closed. It is a fantastic way of bringing yourself back into the present in a situation where you need to do that as an emergency. But the best thing is to do it regularly. 5 minutes a day can make a dramatic difference to the way that you deal with stress and the presence and the extent to which you can place your attention. What happens with this practice, hello, there we go, is a little bit like what happened when you learned to ride a bike. You remember when you learned to ride a bike, you probably had stabilizer wheels on the side of it, right? And then at some stage your mum or your dad took those off and she or he ran behind you, you pedaled as fast as you can and they let you go. And you went at speed about 20 yards or 20 feet down the road and then you started to fall over to the left. And as you started to fall over, your body went, oh God, I'm falling over to the left, and you started to fall over to the right. And then the left, and then the right, and you headed off down the road like that. Following day, you were cycling down the road like this. Well, in actual fact, you weren't. In actual fact, you were still doing that, but the adjustments were more frequent, or less frequent, and smaller, because you had practiced it. When you go through this exercise of placing your attention on your breath, bringing it back continually, you find that when you sit down to place your attention on something in the real world, that you can say, my attention is here right now. Oh, it's wandered, I need to bring it back. Oh, it's wandered, I need to bring it back. And over time, the periods away become shorter. You become more capable of managing it, and you get the impression of a much more stable attention. But it takes a little bit of work. So 5 minutes a day is enough, 15 minutes a day is better. As a leader's toolbox, it gives you the ability to access your circuitry, it gives you the ability to understand what's going on inside you, manage the inner content, and therefore, it gives you the ability to tune into that ability to manage yourself. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about emotional intelligence is self-awareness being absolutely critical to the ability to manage your emotions and the emotions of others. We talk about, when we coach people, we talk about part of our job being to help them to become aware of their situation. That's exactly what mindfulness is about. Ellen Langer, who is a great expert in this area, I think it's a wonderful quote. She says, because people are engaged when they're mindful, we could argue that the job of a leader is to bring mindfulness to the people around them. Let me finish off with a quick summary. I looked at all of the studies that were done on this, and I summarized all the benefits that came out of the ones that you saw at the beginning. Because I wanted you to get a sense that if you never do this in your company, if you only ever do this for yourself, there is a lot to be gained for 5 minutes a day. Heightened energy, reduced stress, greater focus and concentration, better sleep, and so on and so forth. From an organization's point of view, the impact is increased resilience, raised engagement, increased productivity, and if you're a leader, it it's all of the above. There really, really is no easier way to have a dramatically deep and broad an impact on the people that work for you as the implementation of a mindfulness strategy. Now, very quickly, if you decide to go this way, let me give you 7 steps. First, you can't do this in one training. It's not an event. You can't bring somebody in on a Friday afternoon and say, we're going to make you mindful from 2 to 5, and after that we'll have some cocktails. This is a practice that has to be developed over time. And it needs to be developed with somebody that knows what they're doing. Make sure that you've got somebody who understands and has done this before. Second thing is, like all business situations, make sure you're clear about what you want to achieve. Are you trying to reduce stress in people? Figure out how you're going to measure it. Are you trying to impact absenteeism? Figure out how you're going to measure it beforehand. Not everybody jumps on this immediately. Some people love it. Find the ones who will love it. Make them champions. Do a pilot. Get some people working with it, and then introduce introductory sessions. My wife thinks that I am a much better version of me as a mindful person over the last several years than I was before. But she still does not practice mindfulness herself. It works for everybody. It's a simple technique, but not everybody wants it or cares for it. So you don't force it upon them. You make it optional. The final thing I would say is, when you say meditation, people, particularly of my generation, and that's probably your management suite, will tend to think of an entirely different era. Okay. Oh, you like that, Jim? Oh. Come back here. Come back here. Come on, Fido. Come on. I got you. He's lost. Okay. I got it. So, here's what I suggest. Don't use the M word. Don't start talking on day 1 about meditation. Awareness training, focus training, the ability to pay attention. And once you've got people understanding it and they get the introduction that I gave to you, then they'll become more open. But many people just close down the moment they hear the M word. But let me leave you with one quotation which I found on the web, which I think absolutely summarizes why, if it didn't make sense to business, it still makes sense to us as individuals. This gentleman, I think, absolutely nails the essence of our life. He said, at any moment, the only true certainty is our ability to pay attention to one thing or another. What are you giving your attention to in this moment? You have one life, you live it moment by moment, because by definition, your highest priority right now is what you're giving your attention to. And in every moment, you should be asking, do I really want to give my attention to this now, or should it be elsewhere? And if it should be elsewhere, choose to place it elsewhere. And if you want to choose to place it elsewhere, learn how to be able to do that. So thank you very much for laughing in all the right places and so on. Thank you for closing your eye and going along with it. Thank you for leaving your phone on, whoever that was. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Coaching-ul ca metodă de dezvoltare a competențelor manageriale și invit aici în panel pe Adrian Nicolae, coach, trainer, certificat point of view, și pe Anda Șuta, coach intern PRD Grup Societate General, coach acreditat internațional și partener să le aranjăm orice.
În primul rând, vreau să vă adresez eu o întrebare foarte pe scurt. Și eu să încep cu Ana. În ce măsură crezi că, eu știu, coaching-ul poate să contribuie la, să spun așa, ceea ce ne-a prezentat Deiric până acum, și anume să ajungem să putem să ne concentrăm asupra unui singur lucru, să fim să zâmbim atunci când muncim. Este microfonul, dar e ascuns după numele lui Adrian. Așa, vezi și deschide, te rog. Ia pe ăsta.
Foarte scurt și foarte simplu, într-o foarte mare măsură. Și am să vă spun asta, sau spun asta și dintr-un exemplu personal, dacă vreți. Provocându-vă cu o simplă întrebare, apropo de cele două prezentări și ale lui Deiric și a Liliei, dacă ați încercat măcar o dată în viață să fiți prezenți și conștienți de acțiunile voastre și de impactul acțiunilor voastre asupra performanței și asupra oamenilor din jur. Eu personal, vreți să ridicați mâna? Ok, mulțumesc. Probabil că ați avut destule descoperiri dacă ați făcut asta. Eu am avut, acum 3-4 ani, din experiența mea personală, pot să vă spun că am descoperit ce înseamnă să fiu prezentă și conștientă de ceea ce se întâmplă în jurul meu și ceea ce se întâmplă cu mine. Ce s-a întâmplat în momentul în care mi-a pus cineva întrebarea cu 3-4 ani a fost că am descoperit că nu eram prezentă de mine, nu eram conștientă de mine, mă scuzați, nu eram prezentă în ceea ce mi se întâmpla mie în viața mea de zi cu zi, nu eram foarte atentă nici la mine, dar nici la ceilalți și la cum impactez eu, poate munca celorlalți sau performanța celorlalți. Și singurul lucru la care eram foarte, să zicem, atentă era cum reacționez. Cât de repede reacționez, la ce reacționez, în ce ritm reacționez. În momentul în care mi-am dat seama că pierd foarte multe lucruri din jurul meu. Pierd ceea ce spunea Doru, pierd în primul rând motivația și bucuria de a face ceea ce fac. Pierd, în al doilea rând, o conexiune la oamenii din jurul meu și la munca pe care o am. Și pierd din vedere intențiile mele și obiectivele mele pe termen lung.
Mulțumesc mult, asta. O să revenim la tine, Adrian. Dacă poți să ne spui, pentru cei care nu știu, Adrian are un stand afară, la Points of View, cu niște instrumente extraordinar de interesante. Și v-aș ruga să treceți pe la el, să vedeți unde a ajuns, să spun așa, tehnologia, inclusiv în domeniul instrumentelor de dezvoltare personală. Vreau să mă întreb, cine a lucrat vreodată cu zombie? Și aici nu am psihologii, pot să ridice mâna, că ceilalți nu înțelegeți ce mă întreb. N-avem decât 3? Hai, cu curaj! Cine e psiholog, mâna sus prima oară, ca să vă fac de râs după aia, că nu știți de zombie. Zombie e un test, pentru cei care nu știți, care are, habar n-am, nu știu câte poze, dar pot să vă spun un lucru. Niște urâți, toți, îți vine să ne punești. N-ai cum să nu pleci de acolo cu o boală după ce te întâlnești cu psihologul, îți dă să te uiți la pozele alea, sunt numai urâți cu toții, și alb-negru, și zici că sunt tataia și mamaia de pe vremea bunicii lor și n-ai cum să pleci de acolo cu probleme. În schimb, Adrian, prin Points of View, a adus o metodologie, o tehnologie, și să rog eu să explici un pic, atât de complexă încât este o plăcere să încerci să-i descoperi pe ceilalți sau să te descoperi pe tine. Și ceea ce este foarte important este că noi, România, suntem o țară micuță. Foarte micuță. Și, în general, nouă ne plac americanii. Îi iubim, în general. Cam tot ce se întâmplă pe acolo, că unii zic că nu. Vă spun eu ca așa. Pe măsură ce se întâmplă multe lucruri pe acolo, se întâmplă acele lucruri și la noi. Dacă vreți, vă dau nenumărate exemple. Adrian a venit în România și a avut curajul să vină cu aceste instrumente pe care să vi le prezinte vouă, mai ales celor care sunteți psihologi, dar nu numai lor, și trainer, coach, celor care lucrați în dezvoltare personală, astfel încât să vă îmbunătățiți calitatea serviciilor voastre. Adrian, cred că...
Da, mersi, domnul.
Ți-am luat speech-ul, da?
Dacă vorbim despre coaching, unul din instrumentele celor de la Point of View se numește chiar așa de coaching game și el vrea să replice identic procesul de coaching. Este practic o metodologie de joc, în cadrul de joc, în 4 pași, unde primul este chiar pauza. Pauza care ne ajută să descoperim această stare de mindfulness. E foarte greu de explicat prin cuvinte ceea ce aceste instrumente pot aduce, de aceea vă așteptăm, dacă doriți să experimentați, să trăiți personal ce sentimente și ce emoții pot aduce aceste instrumente la standul nostru în pauză.
Adrian, ce spun clienții tăi după ce interacționează cu instrumentele și sunt convins că după aceea tu practic te întâlnești cu ei și spun Adrian, a fost fascinant, a fost fenomenal, a fost extraordinar.
De când l-am descoperit că de acum 1 an și jumătate, cam de 6 luni am adus noi în România, eu l-am folosit foarte des în procese de coaching 1-la-1, în procese de coaching de echipă și pot să vă garantez că nu am avut nici măcar un feedback negativ. Inițial toată lumea circumspectă ce sunt cardurile astea, cum se joacă, ce vor să ne transmită, ce înseamnă ele, până când la final toată lumea realizează că sunt mult mai mult decât carduri, sunt practic o poartă de deschidere a inimilor oamenilor, o metodă de a crea un mediu de comunicare sigur, autentic și de a invita la retrospecție interioară.
Mulțumesc mult! Acum, te rog.
Dacă ne auzim, one question for Derek și una pentru Lilia. Derek, you said it's okay. You said it's okay to talk to your inner voice while relaxing. When you try to relax, sometimes you talk to yourself. What do you do when you talk to yourself that much that you cannot relax and you say, shut up? I don't want to talk anymore with myself. I just want to sleep. I just want to be relaxed. What do you do?
No, I think what I was trying to say was involuntarily you've got this dialogue going inside your brain. This commentator who is commentating on your life as if it was a sports event. I think it's not so much important to engage with it as simply to be aware of it. And just once you become aware of it, well then you become aware of how it's influencing what you're doing. And that's what the coach in fact seeks to do, is to bring awareness to that. Because if you have a dialogue, if you have a commentator saying in your ear, you're never been any good as a presenter, you've never been very good on your feet, and so on and so forth, and you're not aware of it.
I agree with me. I don't criticize myself, I just worry too much.
Yeah. I think the critical thing is to recognize that that dialogue is going on. And then when you become aware of it, then what happens over time is you become aware of what is the genesis of that dialogue. And I was making a flippant remark earlier on about sandwiches and empty stomachs, but you know, our mood can swing just simply on an impulse that comes from our gut that says, I need more sugar, please. And our dialogue can change just because something physically changed with us. The critical thing is that we become on an ongoing basis aware of that going on, so that we can say, oh, that's changed. Why? What caused that? And then when you understand, then you can decide if you want to engage with that.
Și pentru Lilia, mă gândeam apropo de coaching, spuneai la un moment dat că ești un fel de ghid, de fapt, nu dai soluții, ești omul care ascultă și încearcă să-l orienteze pe cel care apelează la serviciile tale. Se întâmplă, cred că foarte multora dintre noi, să avem la un moment dat în viață, într-un moment, să nu știm exact ce vrem. Că tu spuneai, trebuie să știi ce vrei. Sunt persoane, eu sunt general o persoană mai hotărâtă, că am știu ce vreau, știu ce target am și în general funcționez pe target. Dar sunt oameni care nu știu ce doresc sau se zbat între două idei. Aș vrea să fac asta, dar se bate cap în cap cu cealaltă. Atunci cum faci?
Eu cred că fiecare persoană poate să detecteze momentul în care nu se mai simte împlinită sau fericită. indiferent pentru care este motivul unei neîmpliniri personale. Și o ședință de coaching poate fi dedicată unui singur, găsirii unui obiectiv. Dacă nu ești...
Dacă ai două obiective și nu știi pe care să...
Eu cred că fiecare persoană poate, la un moment dat, să aleagă. A alege înseamnă a renunța. La un moment dat, alegi un lucru, îți pui toată atenția și intenția pentru a realiza acel lucru și apoi vine rândul și celuilalt lucru. În același timp, poate fi și o tehnică de sabotare. Vreau aici, dar vreau aici, dar vreau aici, dar vreau aici și asta te ține pe loc. În același timp, dacă îți asumi ce vrei, asta te ajută să faci un pas înainte spre direcția pe care o alegi. Și apoi poți să faci și celălalt pas și în cealaltă direcție. Dar, iarăși, dacă nu vrei să te hotărăști, și acesta este un limbaj. Este un mecanism. Mintea noastră lucrează, conținutul nostru interior lucrează, cu cât mai mult cucerim spațiul în conștientizare și asumare, cu atât mai ușor, la un moment dat, ne vine să adoptăm, să facem anumite alegeri și să adoptăm anumiți pași.
Știi că e veșnica dispută între ce vrea inima și ce vrea creierul. Care e mai inteligent dintre ele?
Eu cred că inima, creierul și instinctul, ele toate funcționează ca un ceas când sunt aliniate și atunci se spune că omul este fericit, este integru. Eu nu cred că inima vrea altceva decât vrea mintea. Eu cred că mintea deseori ne joacă feste înspăimântându-ne despre ce s-ar întâmpla dacă am alege cu inima. Și totuși, reflectând un pic și având o disciplină în a ne asculta și a vedea, câteodată mintea noastră are nevoie de protecție. Cum am spus Deiric mai devreme, noi suntem construiți ca să avem grijă de noi înșine. Și ce ne spune inima că vrea mintea, zice, nu o să poți niciodată să faci asta, că nu o să pierzi serviciu, o să faci aia, o să faci aia. Și e important să vezi ce vrea mintea de fapt. Vrea o securitate? De unde poate să vină acea securitate? Nu este un proces care este la îndemână atunci când nu ai obișnuința asta. Dar cu un pic de disciplină și cu un pic de practică, că ăsta e cel mai important lucru. Să practici până când practici să te asculți, să practici să fii atent și la respirație, și la ce-ți dorești, și la ce rulează în mintea ta, poate chiar să lași stolul de gânduri, să treacă și să lași să moară de foame, pentru că uitându-te la ele și dându-le de mâncare, ele devin tot mai groase și tot mai mari. Dar iarăși, e vorba de o practică și de o disciplină care te aduce într-un moment, nu aș vrea să spun zen, ci de o asumare și de un calm, de o liniște. Spațiul din care poți să decizi ce este cel mai bine, mai benefic, mai productiv și pentru ce ai venit pe lumea asta.
Întrebări din sală, pentru că am ajuns la momentul acestora. Marius, ai vreun microfon lângă tine? Nu, ți-l dau pe al meu atunci. Te rog frumos la domnul Arț, acolo o întrebare.
Deiric, a question for you. It seems so simple talking about doing this 5 minutes a day. Do you have any idea if when society should start thinking about introducing it in the schools, kindergarten? Because, I mean, we talk all about, we try to bring our kids, you know, to say, okay, come on, focus on this, but we do not teach them how. So my question, can you imagine as an idea, to have this implemented in schools?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the question. It is actually already, in Australia, in certain states in the United States, it's already part of the curriculum for kids from 3 and 4 years of age. There's a book, an interesting book if you have young kids, in English called Sitting Like a Frog. And it's for introducing mindfulness to children and in a fun way, making it fun for them to learn how to focus and how to concentrate. But that sort of emotional education is a specific part of the national curriculum in Australia for kids from 3 and 4 years of age upwards. In my own country, in Ireland, there is a program running right now where teachers at the secondary level, so, you know, beyond 12, 13 years of age, are voluntarily into many dozens of schools introducing mindfulness programs. And they're introducing them because we've started to suffer what many Western nations have suffered, the horrendous stress that comes on kids immediately pre-university, that last exam. So let me ask you a question. One, it's very highly advised. Two, a lot of work has been done on it and there are programs out there for it. Three, there is a teacher certification online. I can't remember the name of the organization, a very credible organization, who certify you to teach children mindfulness. And four, it's never too early to start. Thanks.
Mulțumim mult. O să primiți și un premiu. Da, să vedem de unde vine a doua întrebare.
Deiric, thank you for your great presentation first. And the awareness you brought on this topic. There is huge literature and research, and you pointed on that, that shows that this is a wonderful thing for people to have in their lives. But there is a difference between being aware of it and taking action, bringing it into your lifestyle. My question is, only if you can answer it, what triggered you? You are in a business world. You are living high speed, high stress. What made you, what triggered you to make this exercise be part of your lifestyle? It is a point when you decided.
Oh no, there was a very decided point. Let me give you a short answer. About 4 years ago or thereabouts, for no good reason, I started to feel very anxious and very depressed. I am a very practical person. So I went and I had therapy, psychotherapy, I saw counselors, I did everything you could do. I had no reason whatsoever. I have a great job. I get well paid. They pay me to do this. For God's sakes, pay an Irish guy to talk. It's just ridiculous. And there was no good reason for it. And I just could not figure it. And you know what? Our business world is full of people like me who get to a point where their tank is just very, very empty. And I stumbled across a book by a guy called Kabat-Zinn, John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of the big researchers in this area, and that's what got me onto it. So it was, when I speak about this topic, I don't speak about it as a theoretician. I speak about somebody who has literally traveled that road. So I can tell you from my experience and the experience of others that I've encouraged into the practice that it has quite extraordinary impacts. And the impacts are well documented over 35 years in Western medicine. But you know, this is a secular technique that came from the traditions of the Buddhists. It has a 2,500-year-old history. It's lasted for 2,500 years for some good reason. And that good reason is it works.
Thank you.
Saint Deiric, I have a present for you. It's from Tuborg. Please don't drink that.
Thank you.
Nu dăm premii familie, așa că îmi pare rău, asta e. O altă întrebare? Eu o mână acolo și un microfon vine din spate. Ce rugăminte am să vă și prezentați?
Sunt Anca Radu, trainer și dețin o firmă de training. I have a question for Deiric. You mentioned that you have a mindfulness coach, and I would like to ask you, can you tell us more about this profession, mindfulness coach?
Yeah, maybe I'm using the wrong expression. Yeah, I call him my mindfulness coach, and I don't mean the coaching in the sense that Lilia means. I mean just as in he helps me with my mindfulness practice. Okay, so I got to a stage with by the way, you could start with that 5 minutes that I have there, and that will give you enough material to go for a long, long time. Okay. If you decide you want to deepen your practice, you can read a lot on it, or you can get somebody who has already done it. And it's in the great tradition of working with a master, you find somebody who has traveled the same road as you're already trying to travel. And I found a young guy in Holland, a very interesting guy, who spent a couple of years as a Buddhist monk in Vietnam. And then left that, came back to Holland, and basically now teaches people in the business world how to apply mindfulness to a business situation. I speak to him twice a week, and it's not a coaching style conversation as Lilia would understand it. It really is, it's a free rolling, sometimes mentor, occasionally coaching conversation. It's generally focused around my practice, and it's generally focused upon him guiding me according to his understanding of the road that I'm on how I can improve the practice. So it's not necessary in the slightest, but I felt that it was important that if I was teaching this to people within my business and working with my colleagues and getting them to apply it, I thought it was responsible that in the same way as the ICF would have you work with a mentor coach, that I would work with somebody that knew more than I did. So, and I'd be happy to recommend you to that gentleman. He's quite an impressive guy.
Thanks. We have another question here.
Hi, I am Diana, and I'm a coach. And I wonder if you can tell us the name of the app that you're using to stop during the middle of the day. It will be helpful.
It's free. It's free.
Wonderful.
This thing, if you never practice mindfulness, as I talk about it, this app, it's called Mindful Bell. It's free. You can download it, at least it's called that on Android. There are lots of them. And you can set it up, and you can say, I want 8 notifications per day, and randomly during the day, it'll ring a bell. It'll ring a little mindful bell. What I do in that minute, if I'm in the office alone, is I stop, I close my eyes, and I breathe. And it's amazing the impact it has. If I'm with somebody else, I don't do that. I just bring my attention, and it rings in the background, and I just bring my attention to my feet and my seat, and I'm with them. And I promise you, just doing that 3 or 4 times a day, it's quite remarkable how it breaks the roller coaster feeling that some really bad days can have in life. But there are lots of them, and they're all free.
Dacă nu găsiți aplicația de care spunea Deiric, vă spun eu că am găsit una, se numește Pills, de la medicamente. Și tot la fel. Puteți să setați să vă sune de câte ori vreți, puteți să puneți să vă luați și medicamente sau să faceți meditație. Happy because you don't hear me. You don't understand me. It's another application, Pills, for medicine, you know? It's possible to use that. And to combine medicines with meditation is with M both. It's okay. It's not with M in the Romanian language, but who cares? Altă întrebare? Deci, cine pune întrebări își poate alege. Am 3 cadouri aici, alegeți unul. Cine se orientează? O altă întrebare? Dacă nu, vreau să rog pe Anda să facă ea un anunț pentru cei care sunteți interesați legat de o prezentare pe care o să o facă Diana, Lilia, Anda și Mara. Ești în sală, Mara? Ia, ridică-te că nu te vedem. Scuze. Și Mara o să o facă la Marriott.
Mulțumesc, Doru. Așa cum a spus Doru, pe 25 noiembrie, la Marriott, în București de data aceasta, sunteți invitații noștri pentru o experiență reală de coaching, alături de noi 4, plus alți 2 colegi coach care nu au putut veni astăzi, toți 6 fiind coach partener profiles. Experiența, dacă vreți, va fi una de genul sau de tipul 360 coaching, adică din perspectiva persoanei sau coach-ului, cum spunea Lilia, veți putea vedea ce înseamnă coaching-ul profiles, apoi din perspectiva managerului sau celui care își dorește pentru un subaltern sau pentru o persoană din echipă sau pentru echipa lui ce înseamnă coaching-ul și ce înseamnă din perspectivă HR. Pentru că ceea ce noi știm și am constatat în experiența noastră că într-un astfel de proces sunt implicați mai multe persoane. și sunt implicați mai mulți poli, dacă vreți, fiecare cu atribuții destul de clare și cu o responsabilitate în acest proces, astfel încât efectul sau rezultatul să apară, încă schimbarea. Mulțumesc. Și uitasem, cer scuze. Pentru mai multe detalii, aveți un flyer în agenda voastră, în mapa voastră de prezentare lângă agenda, unde puteți să-mi scrieți, există și o adresă a mea acolo, pentru mai multe informații. Mulțumesc.
De asemenea, veți primi un e-mail cu informații de la noi. Ok. Dacă nu mai aveți întrebări, am o întrebare. Cine vrea cafea mâna sus? Ok. Mulțumim mult.
Pauză de cafea.
Da, mulțumim mult paneliștilor noștri. Pauza este de 20 de minute, da? Pentru că oricum vă întoarceți după 30, dar vreau să știți asta.